What's good? It's your boy Jay Lucas, nutrition, dietitian, and exercise physiologist, certified specialist in sports dietetics. I'm here to give you some information and an update on one of the latest position stands published by the International Society of Sports Nutrition on protein and exercise. This has been one of the most comprehensive papers that I have ever read on protein and exercise, and I wanted to bring the information to you. So thanks for tuning in, and make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and specifically tune into this video that will talk about the benefits of protein on exercise performance for endurance or resistance training, in addition to looking at the benefits of protein for body composition, looking at protein timing, taking protein before, during, or after exercise, and how that affects your ability to gain lean body mass. Secondarily, looking at the recommended intakes of protein, protein quality, protein sources such as animal versus plant-based, which one has better quality. Also looking at preparation methods of various proteins, such as ion exchange or microfiltration, and how that affects the protein quality, in addition to looking at protein safety. Is too much protein effective to the kidneys or to the liver? Tune in to check out. Let's see what we have. So, starting off with the abstract. So the position statement of the International Society of Sports Nutrition provides an objective and critical review related to the intake of protein for healthy exercising individuals. Based on the current available literature, the position of the society is as follows. Based on this article, they basically pulled some specifics out of this paper. So for those of you that don't want to go through my whole YouTube video, here's the overview of this article. 1. An acute exercise stimulus, particularly resistance exercise and protein ingestion, both stimulate muscle protein synthesis and are synergistic when protein consumption occurs before or after resistance exercise. For building muscle mass and for maintaining muscle mass through a positive muscle protein balance, an overall daily protein intake in the range of 1.4 to 2.0 grams protein per kilogram body weight per day is sufficient for most exercising individuals, a value that falls in line with the acceptable macronutrient distribution range published by the Institute of Medicine for protein. 3. There is novel evidence that suggests higher protein intakes, over 3 grams per kilogram per day, may have positive effects on body composition and resistance-trained individuals. 4. Recommendations regarding the optimal protein intake per serving for athletes to maximize muscle protein synthesis are mixed and are dependent upon age and recent resistance exercise stimuli. General recommendations are 0.25 grams of a high-quality protein per kilogram of body weight, or an absolute dose of 20 to 40 grams. Acute protein doses should strive to contain 700 to 300 milligrams of leucine and or a higher relative leucine content, in addition to a balanced array of the essential amino acids. These protein doses should ideally be evenly distributed every 3 to 4 hours across the day. 7. The optimal time period during which to ingest protein is likely a matter of individual tolerance, since benefits are derived from pre or post-workout ingestion. However, the anabolic effect of exercise is long-lasting, at least 24 hours, but likely diminishes with increasing time post-exercise. While it is possible for physically active individuals to obtain their daily protein requirements through the consumption of whole foods, supplementation is a practical way of ensuring intake of adequate protein, quality, and quantity, while minimizing caloric intake, particularly for athletes who typically complete high volumes of training. Rapidly digested proteins that contain high proportions of essential amino acids and adequate leucine are most effective in stimulating muscle protein synthesis. Different types and quality of protein can affect amino acid bioavailability following protein supplementation. Athletes should consider focusing on whole food sources of protein that contain all of the essential amino acids. Endurance athletes should focus on achieving adequate carbohydrate intake to promote optimal performance. The addition of protein may help to offset muscle damage and promote recovery. Pre-sleep casein protein intake of 30 to 40 grams provides increases in overnight muscle protein synthesis and metabolic rate without influencing lipolysis or your body's ability to break fat down. So, those are the summaries of the article. We'll get into the details of each particular section, starting with protein and exercise performance. Endurance exercise performance. Increasing protein intakes above recommended intakes does not enhance endurance performance. Carbohydrates should be the focal focus at 6 to 10 grams per kilogram per day. We know that carbohydrates provide the fuel, the glycogen of the muscle tissue to support high intensity exercise and help with improving the duration of the physical activity. Adding protein to a carb beverage or a gel during exercise suppresses markers of muscle damage. So that exercise may oxidize and break down protein, and by providing protein in that supplement during the exercise, it's been shown to help with reducing muscle damage after the exercise session. Protein, we know in general, does help to decrease muscle soreness. So by adding protein around that endurance exercise, it could help with improving that healing so that you're not sore for as long of a period of time. The suggested protein intake per hour of endurance exercise is 0.25 grams protein per kilogram body weight per hour. Protein and exercise performance. Resistance exercise performance. That's like weight training. Enhancing maximal strength is contingent upon resistance training program variables like your intensity, volume, and progression, the length of the resistance training program or intervention, the training status of the participants engaging in the resistance training program, energy intake and the diet, quality and quantity of protein intake with an emphasis on leucine content of the protein. Co-ingestion of additional dietary ingredients that may favorably impact strength, such as creatine and HMB, would have an impact on enhancing maximal strength. Resistance exercise performance increases in maximal strength. Results from many single investigations indicate that in both men and women, protein supplementation exerts a small to modest impact on strength development. Pooled results of multiple studies using meta-analytic and other systematic approaches consistently indicate that protein supplementation of 15 to 25 grams over 4 to 21 weeks exerts a positive impact on performance. When we're looking at protein and changes in body composition, what was observed? When combined with a hyper-energetic diet and a heavy resistance training program, protein supplementation may promote increases in skeletal muscle, cross-sectional area, and lean body mass. The cross-sectional area looks at the thickness or the diameter of the muscle itself. Anderson et al. 2005 examined 22 healthy men that completed a 14-week resistance training program 3 days per week, consisting of 3 to 4 sets of lower body exercises, while supplementing with either 25 grams of a high-quality protein blend or 25 grams of carbohydrate. When the blend of milk proteins was provided, significantly greater increases in fat-free mass, muscle cross-sectional area, and both the type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers occurred when compared to changes seen with carbohydrate consumption. When combined with a resistance training program and a hypoenergetic diet, an elevated daily intake of protein between 2 to 3 times the RDA can promote greater losses of fat mass and greater overall improvements in body composition. Increasing daily protein intake through a combination of food and supplements to levels above the RDA, which we know that the recommended daily allowance of protein is 0.8 grams per kilogram per day. If we can increase it to 1.2 to 2.4 grams per kilogram per day for the endurance and strength power athletes, it has been associated with supporting the retention of lean body mass, especially when looking at restriction of energy intake. If you're taking in 30 to 40% of your overall energy needs, you need to increase protein to preserve muscle. And it has been demonstrated to maximize the loss of fat while also promoting the maintenance of fat-free mass. Now, especially when we're looking at an athlete, we want to preserve muscle tissue because that's the component that produces force, that produces that ability for the athlete to jump, run faster, and also to protect oneself from injury. So really keeping protein adequate, especially in a weight loss effort, is important so that you don't compromise on the potential performance of the athlete. Protein timing. The strategic consumption of nutrition, namely protein or various forms of amino acids in the hours immediately before and after exercise or during, has been shown to maximize protein repair or muscle repair and optimize strength and hypertrophy related adaptations. Bershom also documented a dose response outcome characterized by a near doubling of net protein balance in response to a 3 to 6 gram dose of the essential amino acids. Tipton et al. Reported that essential amino acids between 9 to 15 grams before and after resistance exercise promoted higher net protein accretion, not just 3 or 4 hours post-exercise, but also over a 24-hour period. Intact protein supplements such as egg, whey, casein, beef, soy, and even whole milk can evoke an anabolic response, growth, that can be similar or greater in magnitude to free-form amino acids, assuming ingestion of equal essential amino acid amounts. They're trying to say that essential amino acids versus whole foods basically can have similar, if not greater, increases on that anabolic stimulus or promoting lean body mass. Whey protein ingested close to resistance exercise promotes a higher activation of mTOR, the mammalian target of rapamycin, a key signaling protein found in myocytes, the muscle cells, that is linked to the synthesis of muscle proteins. The increased mTOR signaling corresponded with significantly greater muscle hypertrophy after 10 weeks of training. The hypertrophic differences between protein consumption and a non-caloric placebo appeared to plateau by week 21, despite a persistently greater activation of this molecular signaling pathway from supplementation. Protein consumption directly after resistance exercise is an effective way to acutely promote a positive muscle protein balance. Protein consumption directly after resistance exercise is an effective way to acutely promote a positive muscle protein balance. Duplicate, sorry about that. Immediately and sustained, every 3 to 4 hours, protein feeding should be provided to optimize impact. So every 4 hours, every 3 hours, you should be consuming protein, preferably 20 grams or more to get that optimal impact on the muscle. 30 to 60-minute post-workout may be the peak of muscle protein synthesis, meaning naturally you may have a spike in your body's ability to maximize protein synthesis within 30 to 60 minutes. But that doesn't mean that if you don't have protein in that time frame, that muscle protein synthesis is not still occurring. When looking at type of protein, it matters. Positive effects of protein timing use milk proteins, whereas studies showing no advantage of protein pre-post-workout use a collagen-based protein. When we're looking at quality, we're looking at essential amino acid content, leucine, etc. It has been shown that the milk-based proteins have more advantageous benefits for supporting lean body mass. Pre-exercise ingestion of protein promoted higher rates of muscle protein synthesis, while also demonstrating increased nutrient delivery to a much greater extent than immediate or 1 hour post-exercise. Subject nutrition habits, training, and exercise habits should be carefully considered when looking at protein amounts and timing. The workout period seems to be lessened for people who are already ingesting appropriate amounts of protein. So if you're eating a higher protein diet, 1.6 grams per kilogram per day, your protein ingestion around your workout may not have as much of an influence on your body's ability to increase lean body mass. The increased sensitivity to protein ingestion might be greatest in the first 5 to 6 hours following exercise. So you might not want to go into a fasting period after you have a resistance exercise training. It can be detrimental to your gains. Timing may be largely dependent on when a pre-workout meal was consumed, the size and composition of that meal, and the total daily protein in the diet. Total protein intake was the strongest predictor of muscular hypertrophy, and that protein timing likely influences hypertrophy to a lesser degree. Protein intake may need to increase by as much as 59% above baseline levels for significant changes in fat-free mass to occur. In younger subjects, the ingestion of 20 to 30 grams of any high biological value protein before or after resistance exercise appears to be sufficient to maximally stimulate muscle protein synthesis. McNaughton and colleagues reported that 40 grams of whey protein ingestion significantly increased the muscle protein synthesis response compared to a 20-gram feeding after an acute bout of whole body resistance exercise. So a lot of people wonder if there's any merit to increasing protein, and the answer is yes. We see here that 40 grams of whey significantly increase the muscle protein synthesis response compared to a 20-gram feeding. Recent work has clarified that whey protein provides a distinct advantage over other protein sources, including soy, considering that it's another fast-absorbing protein, encasing a slower-acting protein source on acute stimulation of muscle protein synthesis. Soy and other plant sources like pea, rice, hemp, etc. have garnered interest as a potential protein source to consider. Joy and investigators compared the effect of supplementing a high dose 48 gram per day of whey or rice protein in experienced resistance trained subjects during an 8-week resistance training program. The investigators concluded that gains in strength, muscle thickness, and body composition were similar between the two protein groups. Unlike soy, more of the essential amino acids from whey proteins, such as hydrosylates and isolates, survive the splenic uptake and travel to the periphery to activate a higher net gain in muscle. The splenic organ is like the graveyard, and that's where those metabolites usually die. So if those essential amino acids can't get past the splenic or spleen, then they can't get to the muscle tissue. Whey proteins have higher essential amino acids and leucine content, solubility, and optimal digestion kinetics, high concentration of amino acids in the blood that facilitates greater activation of muscle protein synthesis and net muscle protein accretion in a direct comparison to other protein choices. The addition of creatine to whey protein supplementation appears to further augment these adaptations. That's why I take whey protein and creatine together. Protein timing summary. Muscle protein synthesis increases approximately 30 to 100% in response to a protein-containing meal to promote a positive net protein balance, and the major contributing factor to this response is the essential amino acid content. The anabolic effect of feeding is approximately 1 to 4 hours. Muscle protein synthesis is elevated. Muscle appears to be sensitized to protein feeding for at least 24 hours after a single bout of resistance exercise. Post-workout carbohydrate supplementation offers very little contribution from a muscle development standpoint, provided adequate protein is consumed. Insulin-mediated effects that reduce muscle protein breakdown peaks at low to moderate levels of insulin that can be achieved by consumption of a 45-gram dose of whey protein isolate alone. Staples and colleagues compare the impact of a carbohydrate plus protein combination on rates of muscle protein synthesis and reported no further increases in muscle protein synthesis beyond what was seen with protein ingestion alone. carbohydrate administration appears to more favorably impact aspects of muscle glycogen recovery. So if you're doing an endurance run, using a lot of energy, playing basketball, say as opposed to someone looking to really increase lean body mass, body composition, bodybuilders, they might not need as much carbohydrate. So they can still optimize on muscle protein synthesis. But the endurance athlete or someone working out more frequently, especially a football player, they need carbohydrate for that matter to stimulate muscle protein synthesis and support the accretion of protein. Pre-sleep protein intake. How does ingestion of protein before bed affect your metabolism and body composition? Pre-sleep protein consumption ingestion is advantageous to muscle protein synthesis, muscle recovery, and overall metabolism in both acute and long-term studies. This is one of the most intriguing pieces of this article. 30 to 40 grams of casein protein ingested 30 minutes prior to sleep increase overnight muscle protein synthesis in both young and old men, respectively. Likewise, in an acute setting, 30 grams of whey protein, 30 grams of casein protein, and 33 grams of carbohydrate consumed 30 minutes prior to sleep resulted in an elevated morning resting metabolic rate. Mazima et al. Reported that subjects' respiratory quotient measured during the morning after pre-sleep nutrition intake was unchanged only for the placebo and casein protein trials, while both carbohydrate and whey protein were increased compared to placebo. This infers that casein protein consumed pre-sleep maintains overnight lipolysis, which means to break down fat, and it basically had no effect on fat oxidation, which is incredible. Pre-sleep protein. This finding was further supported by Kinsey et al. Using a microdialysis technique to measure interstitial glycerol. Glycerol is the backbone of a fat cell, the triglyceride. Concentrations overnight from the subcutaneous abdominal adipose tissue. If we see glycerol, that means hormone-sensitive lipase is activated and breaking down the triglyceride, so it can give an indication for fat burning or fat oxidation. Reporting greater fat oxidation following consumption of 30 grams of casein compared to a flavor and sensory matched non-caloric placebo in obese men. Pre-sleep protein and carbohydrate ingestion resulted in elevated insulin concentrations the next morning and decreased hunger in this overweight population. So perhaps eating before bed might not be bad, but it's about what you eat before bed. Casein is found in cheese or milk-based products, of course. Pre-sleep protein and exercise has been shown to reduce blood pressure and arterial stiffness in young obese women with pre-hypertension and hypertension. Protein consumption in the evening before sleep might be an underutilized time to take advantage of a protein feeding opportunity that can potentially improve body composition and performance. So if you're looking for gains, I highly recommend taking casein protein before bed. Protein ingestion and meal timing. Intermediate doses of 4 20 gram protein doses every 3 hours was superior for stimulating muscle protein synthesis for the 12-hour experimental period versus doing 8 10-gram doses of protein or 2 40-gram doses. So if you think about your diet, if you eat only 2 large protein servings a day, that might not be optimizing on your protein intake. It sees that 4 20-gram doses of protein every 3 hours was superior for stimulating muscle protein synthesis. I would even consider going up 20 to 40 grams of protein, depending on your size and your goal for increasing lean body mass. Generally, you want to aim for a minimum of at least 20 to 25 grams of protein or 0.25 grams per kilogram per meal to maintain muscle protein synthesis. And do not wait more than 3 to 4 hours before you take your next protein intake if you're looking to increase lean body mass. So key takeaways. In the absence of feeding and in the response to resistance exercise, muscle protein balance remains negative. Skeletal muscle is sensitized to the effects of protein and amino acids for up to 24 hours after completion of a bout of resistance exercise. A protein dose of 20 to 40 grams of protein with at least 10 to 12 grams of essential amino acids in between 1 to 3 grams of leucine, stimulates muscle protein synthesis, which can help to promote a positive nitrogen balance. The essential amino acids are critically needed for achieving maximal rates of muscle protein synthesis, making high-quality protein sources that are rich in essential amino acids and leucine the preferred sources of protein. Studies have suggested that pre-exercise feedings of amino acids in combination with carbs can achieve maximal rates of muscle protein synthesis, where protein and amino acid feedings are not clearly documented to increase exercise performance. Ingestion of carbs and protein or essential amino acids during endurance and resistance exercise can help to maintain a favorable anabolic hormone profile, minimize increases in muscle damage, promote increases in muscle cross-sectional area, and increase time to exhaustion during prolonged running and cycling. Post-exercise administration of protein, when combined with suboptimal intake of carbs, can heighten muscle glycogen recovery and may help mitigate changes in muscle damage. Total protein and caloric intake appears to be the most important consideration when it comes to promoting positive adaptations to resistance training, and the impact of timing strategies immediately before or immediately after to heighten these adaptations in non-athletic populations appears to be minimal. Proteins provide the building blocks of all tissues via their constituent amino acids. Athletes consume dietary protein to repair and rebuild skeletal muscle and connective tissues following intense training bouts or athletic events. During the 1980s and early 1990s, Tarnopolsky, Phillips, and Lemon first demonstrated that total protein needs were 50 to 175% greater in athletes than sedentary controls. For resistance train, 1.2 to 1.33 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day should be recommended. This was based off the original nitrogen balance technique, which has been shown to underestimate protein requirements. Protein intakes of 2.4 to 2.5 grams per kilogram per day, respectively, have shown to support positive nitrogen balance. Exercise program, age, body composition, and training status of the athlete, total energy intake should be considered when determining protein needs. A minimum protein dose of 20 grams optimally promotes muscle protein synthesis rates. In the elderly, Yang and colleagues had 37 elderly men, average age of 71, consume incremental doses of whey protein isolate at 0, 10, 20, and 40 gram doses, in combination with a single bout of lower body resistance exercise, and concluded that a 40-gram dose of whey protein isolate is needed in this population to maximize rates of muscle protein synthesis. Now, you would think the elderly might not need as much protein as us because they're not as active, but actually they find that the elderly has a desensitization to protein intake, so their protein needs are actually higher than that of the layperson. So let's get that protein to grandma and grandpa so we can maintain muscle, reduce the risk for falls, and help them to optimize on their longevity. Research indicates that rates of muscle protein synthesis rapidly rise to peak levels within 30 minutes of protein ingestion and are maintained for up to 3 hours before rapidly beginning to lower to basal rates of muscle protein synthesis, even though amino acids are still elevated in the blood. An energy deficit theory has been proposed, which hypothesizes that rates of muscle protein synthesis were blunted even though plasma concentrations of amino acids remained elevated, because the relative lack of cellular ATP was available to drive the synthetic process. In a setting of calorie restriction, it is particularly important to consume 4 whole meals consisting of 20 to 40 grams of protein. I'm thinking in order to continually support that cellular energy to drive the synthetic process. Kim and colleagues recently reported that a 70-gram dose of protein promoted a more favorable net balance of protein when compared to a 40-gram dose, due to a stronger attenuation of rates of muscle protein breakdown. Basically, what this is saying is that a higher protein dose helps to reduce muscle protein breakdown, but it might not necessarily make you more lean or build more muscle. For those attempting to increase their calories, we suggest consuming small snacks between meals consisting of both a complete protein and a carbohydrate source. Arcerio and colleagues employed a protein pacing strategy involving equitable distribution of effective doses of protein at 4 to 6 meals per day of 20 to 40 grams per meal, alone and in combined with multi-component exercise training. Results consistently demonstrate positive changes in body composition and physical performance outcomes in both lean and overweight obese populations. This simple addition could provide benefits for individuals looking to increase muscle mass and improve body composition in general, while also striving to maintain or improve health and performance. Key takeaways: the current RDA for protein we know is 0.8 grams per kilogram per day, with multiple lines of evidence indicating this value is not an appropriate amount for a training athlete to meet their daily needs. While previous recommendations have suggested a daily intake of 1.2 to 1.3 grams per kilogram per day is an appropriate amount, most of this work has been completed with the nitrogen balance technique, which is known to systematically underestimate protein needs. Daily and per dose needs are combinations of many factors, including the volume of exercise, age, body composition, total energy intake, and training status of the athlete. Daily intakes of 1.4 to 2.0 grams per kilogram per day operate as a minimum recommended amount, while greater amounts may be needed for people attempting to restrict energy intake while maintaining fat-free mass. Recommendations regarding the optimal protein intake per serving for athletes to maximize muscle protein synthesis are mixed and are dependent upon age and recent resistance training stimuli. General recommendations are 0.25 grams of a high-quality protein per kilogram body weight, or an absolute dose of 20 to 40 grams. Higher doses are likely needed to maximize muscle protein synthesis responses in the elderly. Even higher amounts appear to be necessary to promote attenuation of muscle protein breakdown. Pacing or spreading these feeding episodes approximately 3 hours apart has been consistently reported to promote sustained increased levels of muscle protein synthesis and performance benefits. Protein quality is typically defined as how effective a protein is at stimulating muscle protein synthesis and promoting muscle hypertrophy. There are 20 total amino acids comprised of 9 essential amino acids and 11 non-essential amino acids. There are 20 total amino acids. Yes, of course. Several methods exist to determine protein quality, such as the chemical score, protein efficiency ratio, biological value, protein digestibility, corrected amino acid score, and the indicator amino acid oxidation technique. Products containing animal and dairy-based proteins contain the highest percentage of essential amino acids and result in greater hypertrophy and protein synthesis following resistance training when compared to a vegetarian protein match control, which typically lacks one or more essential amino acids. Several studies, but not all, have indicated that essential amino acids alone stimulate muscle protein synthesis in the same magnitude as a whole protein with the same essential amino acid content. Patton, Jones and colleagues found that a 180-calorie supplement containing 15 grams of essential amino acids stimulated greater rates of protein synthesis than an 850-calorie meal with the same essential amino acid content from a whole protein source. Now, if I was looking to lose weight, I think I'd take the 180-calorie supplement containing the 15 grams of essential amino acids versus taking an extra 700 calories and getting the same essential amino acid and essentially the same effect, but at the cost of potential weight gain when you're aiming for a weight loss effort. This is where I feel supplements can come into play to help out your goal. The 3 branched chain amino acids, leucine, isoleucine, and valine, are unique among the essential amino acids for their roles in protein metabolism, neural function, and blood glucose and insulin regulation. Orally ingested branched chain amino acids appear rapidly in the bloodstream and expose muscle to high concentrations, ultimately making them key components of skeletal muscle protein. Wilson and colleagues have recently demonstrated in an animal model that leucine ingestion alone and with carbohydrate consumed between meals extends protein synthesis by increasing the energy status of the muscle fiber. The duration of protein synthesis after resistance exercise appears to be limited by both the signal, leucine is the captain, ATP status, as well as the availability of substrate, additional essential amino acids found at a whole protein source. Athletes should focus on consuming adequate leucine in each of their meals through selection of high-quality protein sources. Key points. Protein sources containing higher levels of the essential amino acids are the ones that help to contribute to muscle protein synthesis. The body uses 20 amino acids to make protein, 7 of which are the essential amino acids, with 2 that are conditionally essential. Ingestion of all of those are needed in order to maximally support muscle protein synthesis. Essential amino acids also appear to be uniquely responsible for increasing muscle protein synthesis, with doses ranging between 6 to 15 grams, all exerting stimulatory effects. In addition, doses of approximately 1 to 3 grams of leucine per meal appear to be needed to stimulate protein translation machinery. Key takeaways. Branched-chain amino acids appear to exhibit individual and collective abilities to stimulate protein translation. However, the extent to which these changes are aligned with changes in muscle protein synthesis remains to be fully explored. While greater doses of leucine have been shown to independently stimulate increases in protein synthesis, a balanced consumption of the essential amino acids promotes the greatest increases. The prioritization of feedings of protein with adequate levels of leucine and branched-chain amino acids will best promote increases in muscle protein synthesis. Now taking a closer look at protein sources. Milk proteins. Consuming milk following exercise has been demonstrated to accelerate recovery from muscle-damaging exercise, increasing muscle glycogen and replenishment, improving hydration status, improving protein balance to favor synthesis, ultimately resulting in increased gains in both neuromuscular strength and skeletal muscle hypertrophy. Thus, that's why athletes drink chocolate milk. Milk protein contains the highest score on the PDCAA's rating system, and in general contains the greatest density of leucine. Milk can be fractioned into 2 protein classes, casein and whey. Whey protein contains 11% leucine, and casein contains 9.3% leucine. Both are high in quality. The 2 differ in the rate at which they digest, as well as the impact they have on protein metabolism. Whey protein is water-soluble, mixes easily, and is rapidly digested. Hyperaminoacidemia occurs 100 minutes after administration, with a return to their baseline 300 minutes later. This is the notion between 3 to 4 hours ingestion of 20 to 40 grams of protein in order to create that hyperaminoacidemia, which means a higher blood level of amino acids. Casein is water insoluble, coagulates in the gut, and is digested more slowly than whey protein. Casein also has intrinsic properties such as opioid peptides, which effectively slow gastric motility. Slow increase in amino acid concentrations, which remain elevated above baseline after 300 minutes. So the casein provides those amino acids for a longer period of time versus the whey protein, which is more quickly digested and utilized by the muscle. Research also has demonstrated that 10 weeks of whey protein supplementation in trained bodybuilders resulted in greater gains in lean mass, 5 grams versus only 0.8 grams. 5 kilograms versus 0.8 kilograms, and strength compared to casein. These findings suggest that the faster digesting whey proteins may be more beneficial for skeletal muscle adaptations than the slower digesting casein. Effects of milk proteins on glycogen replenishment and skeletal muscle damage. Skeletal muscle glycogen stores are critical in relation to both prolonged and high-intensity exercise. Glycogen synthase activity is considered one of the key regulatory factors for glycogen synthesis. The addition of protein in the form of milk and whey protein isolate to a moderate but not high carbohydrate-containing beverage promotes increased rates of muscle glycogen replenishment following hard training. The addition of protein facilitates repair and recovery of the exercise muscle. These effects are thought to be related to a greater insulin response following the exercise bout. Whey protein enhances glycogen synthesis in the liver and skeletal muscle more than casein in an insulin-independent fashion that appears to be due to its capacity to upregulate glycogen synthase activity. The addition of milk protein to a post-workout meal may augment recovery, improve protein balance, and speed glycogen replenishment. Health benefits of milk-based proteins. Whey protein contains an array of biologically active peptides whose amino acid sequence gives them specific signaling effects when liberated in the gut. Whey protein is also high in beta-lactoglobulin and alpha-lactoalbumin, 75% of total bovine whey proteins, but it is also rich in essential amino acids, approximately 50% by weight. Whey protein appears to play a role in enhancing lymphatic and immune system responses. Alpha-lactalbumin contains an ample amount of tryptophan, which increases cognitive performance under stress, improves quality of sleep, and speeds wound healing. Lactoferrin is also found in both milk and in whey protein and has been demonstrated to have antibacterial, antiviral, and antioxidant properties. There is some evidence that whey protein can bind iron and therefore increase its absorption and retention. How about eggs? Eggs are my favorite during breakfast, and egg protein has been used as a standard for comparing other dietary proteins. Eggs are an excellent source of protein for athletes due to their excellent digestibility and amino acid content. Eggs has been criticized due to their cholesterol content. A growing body of evidence demonstrates the lack of a relationship between egg consumption and coronary heart disease, making egg-based products more appealing. One large egg has 75 calories and 6 grams of protein, but only 1.5 grams of saturated fat, while one large egg white has 16 calories and 3.5 grams of protein and is fat-free. Egg proteins also have been identified as a functional food. A functional food is defined as foods that, by the presence of physiologically active components, provide a health benefit beyond basic nutrition. Important nutrients provided by eggs include riboflavin, selenium, and vitamin K. Eggs, now this is if you eat the whole egg though, not the egg white alone. Eggs are also rich in choline, a nutrient which may have positive effects on cognitive function. Moreover, eggs provide an excellent source of the carotenoid-based antioxidants, lutein and zeaxanthin. These are vitamin A's. That's the yellow part of the yolk. Eggs can be prepared with most meal choices, of course, whether breakfast, lunch, or dinner. How about beef and other flesh proteins? Meat proteins are a major staple in the American diet, especially here in Texas, and depending on the cut of meat, contain varying amounts of fat and cholesterol. Meat proteins are well known to be rich sources of the essential amino acids. Beef is a common source of dietary protein and is considered to be a high biological value because it contains the full balance of essential amino acids in a fraction similar to that found in the human skeletal muscle. A standard serving of a 113.4 gram lean beef provides 10 grams of the essential amino acids, of which 3.5 grams come from leucine, and 30 grams of total amino acids. This 30-gram dose of beef protein has been shown to stimulate protein synthesis in both young and elderly subjects. Beef and other flesh proteins can serve as an important source of micronutrients such as iron, selenium, vitamin A, B12, and folic acid. These minerals and micronutrients cannot be as easily obtained through plant-based proteins, and or the bioavailability of these macronutrients from plants is limited. In older men over a 12-week resistance training period, whole body density fat-free mass and whole body muscle mass increase in the meat source diet group, but decrease in the lacto-ovo vegetarian diet group. A diet high in meat protein in older adults may provide an important resource in reducing the risk for sarcopenia, or age-related muscle loss. Positive results have also been seen in elite athletes that consume meat-based proteins as opposed to vegetarian diets. For example, carnitine is a molecule that transports long-chain fatty acids into mitochondria for oxidation and is found in high amounts in meat. While evidence is lacking to support an increase in fat oxidation with increased carnitine availability, carnitine has been linked to the sparing of muscle glycogen and decreases in exercise-induced muscle damage. Beef and other flesh proteins. Creatine is a naturally occurring compound found mainly in muscle. My next post will be about creatine. The concentration of creatine in uncooked chicken and beef is approximately 30 millimole per kilogram, meaning that one serving of beef contains approximately 0.4 grams of creatine. Vegetarians have lower total body creatine stores than omnivores. I'd actually recommend supplementing, which demonstrates that regular meat eating has a significant effect on human creatine status. Moreover, creatine supplementation studies with vegetarians indicate that increased creatine uptake levels do exist in people who practice various forms of vegetarianism. Some studies have found that meat as a protein source is associated with higher serum levels of insulin growth factor 1, which in turn is related to increased bone mineralization and fewer fractures. Meat versus plant-based diets is one better than the other. A highly debated topic in nutrition and epidemiology is whether vegetarian diets are a healthier choice than omnivorous diets. Vegetarian diets often lack equivalent amounts of protein when compared to omnivorous diets. One key difference is the fact that vegetarian diets lack equivocal amounts of protein when compared to omnivorous diets. Generally, by consuming high-quality animal-based proteins, milk, meat, eggs, cheese, an individual will achieve optimal growth as compared to ingesting only plant-based proteins. But one thing that I'll add is that vegetarian diets have been associated with less risk for hypertension, diabetes, and heart disease. The key, if you're eating meat, in my opinion, is that you should be eating more fruits and vegetables to counteract any of the potential harmful effects, and also choosing more lean cuts of meat and preparing it by roasting or marinating prior to grilling to reduce any of the heterocyclamines or carcinogenic compounds. Soy is considered also a protein source, but it is lower quality. Hartman et al. Found that the participants that consumed the milk protein increased lean mass and decreased fat mass more than the control in soy groups during a 12-week resistance training program. Soy has an apparent ability to stimulate muscle protein synthesis more than casein, however, not more than whey at rest and in response to an acute bout of resistance exercise. Soy is considered a complete protein, but it contains lower amounts of branched-chain amino acids. Dietary soy phytoestrogens also inhibit mTOR expression in skeletal muscle through activation of AMPK. That's enough for me. I'm trying to optimize on my gains. I don't want anything blocking mTOR. Thank you. Meat versus plant-based proteins is one better than the other. Rice protein is a medium to slow absorbing protein, which is in line with other non-meat, non-dairy proteins. However, leucine from rice protein shows unique absorption kinetics, peaking faster than leucine from whey protein, which is absolutely incredible. A study by Joy and colleagues in which participants participated in resistance training program for 8 weeks while taking identical high doses of either rice or whey protein demonstrated that rice protein stimulated similar increases in body composition adaptations to whey protein. Here's a slide that I pulled from examine.com EDR, where this was referenced from the Journal of Nutrition 2015. Looking at whole food plant proteins, we see that the absorption of the amino acids will be less in comparison to animal protein. About 45 to 80% of the plant-based amino acids are absorbed versus greater than or equal to 90% of the amino acids from animal-based proteins. There's also a reduction in protein synthesis, and we know that the plant-based proteins are limited in certain amino acids like leucine, which is the captain and the stimulator of muscle protein synthesis, lysine, and methionine. Plant proteins lack essential amino acids, increase amino acid oxidation, which means if you have the muscle tissue here, the body will actually oxidize those muscle tissues to be used by the body and by other means. And it also increases urea production. So really finding a way to eat other plant-based protein sources that are higher in these leucine, lysine, methionine pieces, perhaps beans and rice, can help with supporting the total amino acid mixture to help turn these arrows in the opposite direction and support lean body mass. Additionally, that's why resistance training, especially for vegetarians, is important, because it helps with supporting bone mass and lean body mass to actually help retain and cause a retention of the lean tissue so that there's less amino acid oxidation that may occur. Protein blends. Evidence continues to mount that combining protein sources may afford additional benefits. A 10-week resistance training study by Kirksick and colleagues demonstrated that a combination of whey at 40 grams and casein at 8 grams yielded the greatest increase in fat-free mass. Now, when we're looking at scoring of protein, common means of assessing protein quality includes the biological value, protein efficiency ratio, PDCAAs, and the IAAO. Two critical variables exist that determine a protein's impact on overall protein accretion and protein turnover: leucine content and the digestion rate. Faster digesting sources of protein include whey and egg whites, soy, and very lean cuts of meat greater than 95%. Casein and fatty cuts of meat with less than 90%, with 80% or less lean, act as slowly digested sources of protein. Proteins with the greatest leucine content, like dairy, at 9 to 11%, egg at 8.6%, and meat at 8%. While sources low in leucine include plant-based proteins. Leucine content of the meals. Leucine content has been associated with increased muscle mass and was inversely correlated with body fat. That is incredible. So it's showing that when you choose a food higher in leucine, it actually may be associated with lower percentages of body fat for yourself over time. Athletes should seek protein sources that are both fast digesting and high in leucine content to maximally stimulate muscle protein synthesis at rest and following training. Key points: multiple protein sources are available for an athlete to consider, and each has their own advantages and disadvantages. Protein sources are commonly evaluated based upon the content of amino acids, particularly the essential amino acids they prefer. I know personally when I'm looking at foods, I'm thinking about what is the essential amino acid content that it may provide me with. Beyond amino acid content, the fat, calorie, and micronutrient content and presence of various bioactive peptides all contribute to a protein's quality. Leucine content and the rate of digestion have also been demonstrated in multiple scientific studies to play an important role in an athlete's ability to train, compete, and recover. Blends of protein sources might afford a favorable combination of key nutrients, such as leucine, essential amino acids, bioactive peptides, and antioxidants, but more research is needed to determine their ideal composition. What about the preparation method? A concentrate is commonly defined as any protein product that is 29 to 80% protein by dry weight. Sport nutrition products generally use concentrates that are 70 to 80% protein. As extra filtering process steps are added, the purity of the final product increases, and when a final protein product yields greater than 90% protein, it is considered an isolated product. The two most popular methods of filtration of a given protein are the use of ion exchange and micro-ultrafiltration methods. Ion exchange exposes a given protein source, such as whey, to hydrochloric acid and sodium hydroxide, thereby producing an electric charge on the proteins that can be used to separate them from lactose and fat. This produces the highest protein concentration. Ion exchange filtration typically denatures some of the value immune boosting and anti-carcinogenic cancer-causing peptides found in whey. Cross-flow microfiltration and ultra-microfiltration are based on the premise that the molecular weight of whey protein is greater than lactose and use 1 and 0.25 micrometers ceramic membranes, respectively, to separate the two, which produces a higher quality protein. Hydrolyzed proteins are whole proteins that are digested by homogenization or by chewing. Whole proteins are digested by homogenization when you chew, followed by pepsin in the stomach. Then peptides, proteins, and single amino acids are released into the small intestine and are either partially hydrolyzed into oligopeptides, 2 to 8 amino acids in length, or are fully hydrolyzed into individual amino acids. Research indicates that amino acids are absorbed more rapidly when they are consumed as di or tripeptides compared to free-form amino acids or complete proteins. The rate of absorption may lead to a more favorable anabolic hormonal environment. Digestive enzymes and proteins. The prevalence of digestive enzymes in sports nutrition products has increased during recent years, with many products now containing a combination of protease and lipase. Protease breaks down protein, lipase breaks down fat, with addition of carbohydrates and plant proteins. Digestive enzymes and proteins. Protease can hydrolyze proteins into various peptide configurations and potentially single amino acids. It appears that digestive enzyme capabilities and production decrease with age, thus increasing the difficulty with which the body can break down and digest large meals. Digestive enzymes could potentially work to promote optimal digestion by allowing upregulation of various metabolic enzymes that may be needed to allow for efficient bodily operation. Further, digestive enzymes have been shown to minimize quality differences between varying protein sources. Individuals looking to increase plasma peak amino acid concentrations may benefit from hydrolyzed protein sources or protein supplemented with digestive enzymes. However, more work is needed before definitive conclusions can be drawn regarding the efficacy of digestive enzymes. What about protein safety? This is such a big topic. Despite a plethora of studies demonstrating safety, much concern still exists around the clinical implications of consuming increased amounts of protein, particularly on renal and hepatic or liver health. The majority of these concerns stem from renal failure patients and educational dogma that has not been rewritten as evidence mounts to the contrary. Certainly, it is clear that people in renal failure benefit from protein-restricted diets, but extending this pathophysiology to otherwise healthy, exercise-trained individuals who are not clinically compromised is inappropriate. Published reviews on this topic consistently report that an increased intake of protein by competitive athletes and active individuals provides no indication of hepatorenal harm or damage. There is a lack of evidence linking a high-protein diet to renal disease. World Health Organization. The panel charged with establishing reference nutrient values for Australia and New Zealand also stated there was no published evidence that elevated intakes of protein exerted any negative impact on kidney function in athletes or in general. Recently, Antonio and colleagues published a series of original investigations that prescribed extremely high amounts of protein, 3.4 to 4.4 grams per kilogram per day, and have consistently reported no harmful effects. The first study in 2014 had resistance-trained individuals consume an extremely high protein diet, 4.4 grams per kilogram per day, for 8 weeks, and reported no change in adverse outcomes. Follow-up investigation required participants to ingest up to 3.4 grams per kilogram per day of protein for 8 weeks while following a prescribed resistance training program, and reported no changes in any of the blood parameters commonly used to assess clinical health. There was no effect on kidney or liver function. In one 8-week block, participants followed their normal habitual diet of 2.6 grams per kilogram per day, and in the other 8-week block, participants were prescribed to ingest greater than 3 grams per kilogram per day, resulting in an average protein intake of 2.9 grams per kilogram per day over the entire 16-week study. No changes in body composition were reported, and importantly, no clinical side effects were observed throughout the study. Finally, the same group of authors published a 1-year crossover study in 14 healthy resistance-trained men. When prescribed to a high-protein diet, the participants were instructed to ingest 3 grams per kilogram per day and achieved an average intake of 3.3 grams per kilogram per day. And when following their normal diet, they consumed 2.5 grams per protein per kilogram per day. Chronic consumption of a high-protein diet had no harmful effects on kidney or liver function. Key points. Multiple review articles indicate that no controlled scientific evidence exists indicating that increased protein poses any health risks in healthy exercising individuals. Statements by large regulatory bodies have also indicated that concerns about one's health secondary to ingesting high amounts of protein are unfounded. And if anyone knows of some studies, please share it with me. A series of controlled investigations spanning up to 1 year in duration utilizing protein intakes of up to 2.5 to 3.3 grams per kilogram per day in healthy resistance trained individuals consistently indicate that increased intakes of protein exert no harmful effect on blood lipids or markers of kidney and liver function. So the conclusions from this overall article are that it is the position stand of the International Society of Sports Nutrition that the majority of exercising individuals should consume at minimum approximately 1.4 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day to optimize exercise training-induced adaptations. The Institute of Medicine's acceptable macronutrient distribution range is 10 to 35% protein. The amount is dependent upon the mode and intensity of the exercise, the quality of the protein ingested, as well as the energy and carbohydrate status of the individual. There is preliminary evidence that consuming much higher quantities of protein, greater than 3 grams per kilogram per day, may confer a benefit as it relates to body composition. Concerns that protein intake within this range is unhealthy are unfounded in healthy exercising individuals. An attempt should be made to consume whole foods that contain high quality, complete sources of protein. However, supplemental protein is a safe and convenient method of ingesting high quality dietary protein. The timing of protein intake in the period encompassing the exercise session may offer several benefits, including improved recovery and greater gains in lean body mass. However, perhaps the most important issue regarding protein intake during the peri-workout period is that it serves as an opportunity to eat, thus elevating one's total daily protein intake. In addition, consuming protein pre-sleep has been shown to increase overnight muscle protein synthesis and next morning metabolism acutely, along with improvements in muscle size and strength over 12 weeks of resistance training. Intact protein supplements, essential amino acids, and leucine have been shown to be beneficial for the exercising individual by increasing the rates of muscle protein synthesis, decreasing muscle protein degradation or breakdown, and possibly aiding in recovery from exercise. In summary, increasing protein intake, using whole foods as well as high-quality supplemental protein sources can improve the adaptive response to training. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure to subscribe. If you have any specific questions about your protein needs, please feel free to reach out for consultation and check out my website, www.jlucasnutrition.com. Follow on Instagram and Facebook.
These are more than words. This is more than rap. This is the streets, and I am the trap.